Manuela, are you happy to give your presentation now? Or
Oh, yeah.
sorry, I'm struggling to pronounce your names. Just out of my
No,
dyslexia kicks in
fine,
pretty hard at this point.
fine. It's Emanuele. Emanuele. Yeah, but it's fine. So yeah, maybe I could start from uh, what Andy was taking in because basically in um, in 2010 2012 I've been uh, part of this funder group of Macau, that is an assembly of artists based in Milan that we created within a movement in that period. That was the period of the crisis of the financial crisis of 2008 and Occupy Wall Street and Kindesem in Spain and Arab Spring. And specifically in Italy, we organized a platform of artists and performing artists, so from theater and contemporary art scene, but after a while opening up this process called Art Workers Assembly to students, trade unions, workers from the more complex scene of the creative industries and the cultural sectors in general. And what we did in 2012 in Milano, in north of Italy, has been to launch this idea of Macau as a contemporary and not existing contemporary art museum. So pretending to be like MoMA, MACBA, and Mambo and Maxi in Italy. But asking to the people what could be an autonomous, self-managed contemporary art museum. And meanwhile, we occupied a skyscraper in front of the central station in Milan. And we had a huge participation and reaction from the civil society in general, in order to understand how to, in a way, propose a political alternative to the cuts of the welfare system that was super evident in south of Europe in that period, and the precarization of labor and the lack of labor in creative industries concerning the cultural sector. And that's why from that point we stayed experimenting within the Macau Assembly as an autonomous art center, alternative way to self-organize and to decline this issue of mutual aid within artists. And especially in Macau, we had a big involvement and participation of musicians, so of electronic music scene, their young crew, asking for having this self-organized stage, and also very political committed in finding an alternative economic space and an alternative way to stay together, and so a sort of DIY experimentation in Social Fabric. And within this experience, we experimented alternative, how to shape, how to create schemes in what could be an economic space that we can create, we can design or co-design. We used also digital tools and new technology like crypto, anyway, being very critical to the financial markets of Bitcoin. But anyway, we experimented a lot in what could be cryptocurrency used as a solidarity tool, a solidarity technological tool. And within this contest in Macau, in Milano, that is like a group of an assembly, an open assembly, but composed by an average of 100 to 200 person active during the year. We decided, we in a discussion based on consensus in the assembly, weekly based, we discussed and we decided to open up in 2014, so 6-7 years ago, to open up a pilot of a self-managed basic income within the organization. So we started to like share the means of production as a mutual aid in between musician and artist. And then we started to open up common wallet for different aims. And in a certain moment, we decided to feed a common wallet in order to share our collective pot, not based on work, so time spending in the events, organization, whatever, but based on an unconditional sharing of this common wallet. And we provided like 50, an average of 50 basic income per month to the members of the community, based not on a ranking system, so like time banking or demonstrating how much what I did, but based on self-evaluation. So like respecting the freedom of any members to decide to say to the community, I need it. And without any other question. Maybe also respecting that sometimes I need, maybe not because, but maybe also because I need to not to do, or to do something else than that anxiety Andy was talking about. And maybe the community is investing in this freeing up time of a member. And of course, we had a lot of fighting in the discussion, because it's not easy to overcome this paradigm of a distribution of wealth based on work, based on production. And we discovered maybe in this discussion what does it mean to recognize other values, not based on production, but on what is the reproduction of a community, that is not simply based on artworks, pieces of things, or audience and tickets, or on time spending, and so on. And so I think for me and for us has been also a very nice and very interesting laboratory in order to invent and to discuss what is value for us, because this production mode based on work is defining what is value, what is valuable. And so I think apart from these governmental schemes of UBI, this alternative sharing of wealth is also a cultural issue in terms of which kind of paradigm we belong to, and how we can train ourselves to think in another way, because it's not simply an issue of issuing money and liquidity and so on. So apart from this, I don't want to waste too much time. In the last year, within this Institute of Radical Imagination organization that we funded 4 years ago, within artists, activists, academics, and also directors and employees in big institutions, but politically committed in a way. So is a transnational and interinstitutional institution or a think tank. We promoted like a discussion on the European level, there's members also from Russia. We discussed it also in UK, in Canada. So it's not an issue of a European border, but anyway, we open up this discussion regarding what about the artistic scene demanding for a universal and unconditional basic income. And in the end of this path, we launched this manifesto. Is a manifesto of 14 dots. And I think you can find it online. I can share with you a link in which you can maybe follow this presentation. And I can share also with you the link of Macau if you are curious. Basically, this manifesto, I think, is important because it's a clear statement that start avoiding like this idea of art fields as a luxury or a privilege sector, and so is also an attempt to state from the art field that the art function in society is to foster and rethink and reimagine tools for the whole society. And also as artists and activists, we are demanding for a social change, not for our sector. And this the second point, I think I am not following each dots because it would be too long. But anyway, the second point for me that is included in the manifesto is this general issue of freeing up time and the possibility to be free from the blackmail of shitty jobs. And this is a quite clear also heritage from David Graeber and all this reflection. The labor market now has two problems. One is that is based on precarity, and so as labor as not to be a blackmail anymore. And on the other side is the other problem of labor is that, as also you already mentioned, after the tech turn and the last 20 years or 30 years, in our opinion, the problem of work is that is no more able to be the factor for distribute wealth. And this is, for this reason, is an issue perceived also top down. So in terms of governance, especially in the Western countries, US and Europe, in the UBI debate, I think that we have to consider that also the governments, the policy makers knows and has the problem that the Keynes model, the last century model, is already blasted. And there is also a problem of power of buying. No, how the governments, the top down, the policy makers can distribute wealth in order to feed the wheel for the power of buying and so on. And the wage market, the labor market, is not more able to cover this circle, this scheme. Following the manifesto, we worked within transfeminist and the colonial perspective, and we stated for the manifesto that UBI, unconditioned and universal basic income, is also a mean in order to be able to say no to all the labor market based on colonial process. And also during this pandemic, for example, in Italy, is super self-evident how the working poor now is on this axis of racial and sexism improving more and more. Another point quite important in the manifesto is also that UBI is a way to really take seriously the attempt under the climate change to stop this mode of production. Because anyway, we also understood under the lockdowns, if you block this mode of production, you have a huge economic crisis, and the blackmail in between health and work is rising up super evident. So a measure like UBI, in our opinion, is also the door in order to be able to stop this mode of production and make real a starting point for an alternative mode of production that is the real challenge for the Green New Deal or the real climate justice. And going to the end, for sure, we have to understand what could be the scheme for funding a UBI, as already you discussed before. And in these assemblies around Institute of Radical Imagination was central the issue of digital platform. Now in the G20 just happened in Italy, they started to put a fee of the 15% of taxation, but is nothing because my VAT number as like a 40% of taxation. So there is a huge gap in between the taxation on the working system and the profit of the new platform of capital, and on one side. On the other side, there is another huge issue that crossed by Europe and in the last 20 years is, what about the financial market? Because we never have been able to do really a policy regarding how to put taxes on financial trade and transaction, because apart from the moral discourse putting like responsibility on people and taxation, individual taxation and so on, we think that the neoliberal extractivism is putting money mainly in digital platform and financial market. And if we want to take down a social a social justice, economic social justice with schemes like UBI, we have to reclaim value back, mainly from these two directions. And the third, as already Toby was mentioning, is maybe how to deal with the central banks and the issue of money, because anyway there is also a political economical issue regarding the money issue, how to issue money, and the role of central bank in the case of Federal Reserve or ABC in Europe. And we discussed a lot also in the previous year what the function of the monetary systems. Just to end up, we discussed, especially in the last month, in this Institute of Radical Imagination, how to take together this UBI challenge and what what is called UBS, so Universal Basic Services. So in order not to let this Trojan horse already mentioned of the privatization of the public services through a UBI income, we think that our political statement has to put UBI and UBS, so school, health, infrastructure, as a public service for free, as a unique front linked with a UBI as a post-work measure of distribute wealth in society. So maybe I spoke too much, 20 minutes, but more or less these are the inputs that I thought to put in.
Perfetto. Grazie, Emanuele. I think it's so good just to hear kind of like a sort of outside of the UK, so just to know what was going on in other places as well. But I mean, the way that you've just described that journey from the experiment with Macau and kind of occupying that building and it coming from that space of sort of self-organization, I'm really fascinated by this common wallet and how you actually managed to create an alternative structure for that. And then obviously the manifesto that you're talking through is, you know, really compelling and a very nice sort of, you know, something that I'm sure we'd love to find some way of sharing some points around that. I think just to kind of like, I think most of the people that are in the room still know, but just to go back to Momoko's comment that's in the chat, is that UBI Lab Arts is part of this larger UBI Lab network, which really the main point of which is to be working at the level of policy and implementing pilot schemes. So kind of we're sort of in that, but maybe our sort of particular little subgroup is more looking at these creative methods. But I think we feel like, you know, so it's good to sort of see where the crossovers in there are happening. But I mean, I've spoken to Emanuele before, and I think if there's any other sort of questions or comments from other people, they should come first.
I mean, yeah, that was just echoing Andy's points, but yeah, really fascinating, and especially to hear I think I've heard lots of people talk about uh, local currencies and things like this as a means for sort of, even just testing out basic income, whether it's a pilot or even just sort of like, but yeah, the way you described that the struggle that you went through with everyone, even that like, yeah, I have to justify, or, actually will accept that you self-appoint. I think that level of trust as well, I think, is a really important aspect of it. And also, yeah, just even this basic income for me potentially can be that experiment in, actually what would happen if we trusted everyone a little bit better. The whole system is built on that kind of thing. But I think yeah, the projects which you're talking about sound like a really fascinating, and so yeah, again, how art can be used as a political tool as well, just to to shift people's imagination, like, okay, we're not just making an art project about it, we're actually living it in this kind of environment, and we're bringing in all these other people. And I think, yeah, like, I know that Pascal Guillen talks about this sort of idea of how yeah, things on the edge of criminality or on the fringes, this is when, the real change can happen. I think, yeah, the project you're talking about is a really good example of that.
I think there's something in both Manuela and Andy's presentations about the need for a kind of really radical approach and radical vision, and thinking about some of the discussions, relatively few really, but I've been involved in around UBI. I think there's been some sort of sense of trying to, I don't know, come to a compromise or appease or find some kind of middle ground where UBI can fit in within an existing kind of economic system, which is clearly hostile to most of our interests. And just thinking about some of the discussions about the trade unions position in the UK anyway, being slightly hostile, and perhaps really we need to start thinking beyond these kind of compromises and just be quite, I suppose, going back to really what Toby was saying a bit before about going for that utopian vision almost, it's not sort of take the stepping stone approach almost, but actually go for it.
Yeah, I mean, I think
thanks for those presentations. They were really quite inspiring, I think.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, I echo that, and I think you're right, Martin. It's that thing, you can see with this terms of appeasement, that's pretty much what the Finnish trial was. There was a very small piecemeal kind of version of it, and then it gets used as an example. Oh, we tried that and it failed. Let's continue with making everyone work to death in really precarious jobs, and it's all suffering that way. And I think that's the concern, that if you bring in a UBI in the UK at like a really like £40 a week or something like that, it will just be seen as like, oh, it's just this expensive sort of thing. It doesn't really make any difference. Let's keep on going, and we'll just take it away, or it's a way of discrediting it.
Go on, Eleanor.
Hi there. That was so interesting. Such an adventurous experiment as well. I mean, can I just ask, if you could, what would you test next in connection to UBI or other? What would you experiment or test with next? No, I can't really formulate the second question. I'm fascinated by how at some point you decided collectively not to put the value into the resulting product, if it's an art form or a performance or whatever, not to put the value there, but to consider the value in what people need. Is that right? Is that what you did? And if so, how did you arrive at that point? How did you realize that? And did you try first doing the performances and creating value around that? I'm asking because, if you're working with communities, they would find it an interesting example to see the difference between two approaches and to realize that people have actually done it, because most people can't imagine creating value around something that's so brave and so radical. So kind of wondering how you got there and what you did test. And my first question was simply, what would you like to test next?
Yeah. But from first of all, I think anyway, the movement of Macau was quite linked also to workerism, operaism, and post-operaism or post-workerism, as you want. And one of the point already in the 70s in Italy was this concept of refusal of work. In a way also concerning the debate with trade unions and so on. In a certain moment, the idea to be a social fabric cooperating is a collective production of value that is not you cannot reduce, no, as a composition of individuals that in competition or with a single value to demonstrate and so also in the Assembly of Macau in 2012 and in the next years, the discussion was anyway, we can create a value together as organization and have an income as an organization, but would be a mistake to understand or to start up a competition in between the members in order to understand who is the real owner of this collective value. No, and so for the refusal of this competition logic and for this brandization of the organization, no, in which and also this in a way patriarchal way to also within the assembly to demonstrate that the ones that speaks more, the ones that clean more the floor, the ones that dedicate more times becomes in a way the chief, no, or the more representative, and so on. So how to dismantle this logic, no? How to create, to free up time, space in between the relationship that are not always like railed, embodied by the usual competitive and based on meritocracy models in which we are used to think, used to behave, no? And so there was a refusal of considering the collective value as computable in a different portion, no? Because in any way you land on this ranking system, also self-managed ranking system, that in the end foster a sort of competition, no? And so in order to generate, to free up time, we decided that the real value is a sort of an archive of qualitative relationship, of narratives, not units of value. no? Is the conflict, the narratives, your history that you are going to tell me tomorrow, that is the value transaction. And so in order to open up this possibility and to dismantle the computation of value, we decided to consider the collective value as not as something that we have not to rank. And so this is one answer. The second answer is we are now working on a performance on UBI, because one of the member of the UBI Manifesto group, she's an artist based in Brussels, and after this path, she was presenting, she was committed for the opening of the Week of Theatre in Vienna this spring. And they commissioned to her like the opening show, and she decided to do a performance on UBI, and I put the link before there. And so we decided to, and we cooperated in the dramaturgy and the design of the show. And we decided to go on this line, both understanding how to transform in a performative action and in an artwork this discourse, but on the other side, how to process an artwork and a performance as an inquiry, a survey on what the people think locally, for example, in Vienna, regarding labor, distribution of wealth, social security, and so on. And we are doing the second step in September, presenting, and now we are working on it. We are doing the interviews with the local people in Madrid, and we are doing the next show in Reina Sofia in Madrid in September.
That's great, Emanuele. It would be really nice maybe to be able to sort of, because to pull in that artist, that as a case study for our next session, actually, because that's kind of what we've done with most of these, has been sort of presenting artworks or creative works, and this one's been a slightly different tangent to that. But that's amazing to sort of to bring that in at this point would make a very nice segue into what we do next. I'm conscious of time. I think sort of like we've done really well today in terms of kind of like getting into stuff, and it's been amazing to have you, especially when you're on holiday. I really appreciate you using some of your free time to join us. Come along to the session and kind of ask the important questions, and of course to Toby for bringing it all together. Toby, do you want to do any other business or things?
I guess, well, just to say thanks to everyone for coming, and especially for the presenters, Emanuele and Andy. Yeah, like Martin said, like really inspiring, and yeah, I guess good, especially after my hopefully not too dry intro on everything. But I guess, yeah, after that, if anyone wants to get more information about what our next and future meetings will be, I can put this UBI Lab Arts at gmail.com, and or we're on Twitter and Facebook too, if you want to get in touch, and we'll add you to the main list, and we can also find us on social media and all that kind of stuff. But we do also have a WhatsApp group for anyone who likes that kind of thing, and doesn't get sick of being bombarded by sort of things. That group is quite quiet, I can assure you. So not like the other lab groups, but Also the UBI Lab network, they've, you know, like Andy was saying, there's lots of people doing really good stuff, you know, locally in different areas, also on particular issues, like there's a UBI Lab for youth and women groups, and for LGBTQ and things like this, and we're always keen to start new groups for different places. So Emanuele, if you know anyone in Italy who would like to start a lab, but I think, yeah, it sounds like you've already got your hands full of some really interesting stuff. So yeah, and if there's anything you want us to share, we can share all these. I'll send the links which you've put in the chat to the mailing list as a sort of a catch up next week and everything. But yeah, I think that's enough for tonight. And yeah, just to say thanks for everyone for their time and the contributions. It's been a really fascinating evening.
Thank you, Toby. Cheers. And we'll get the recordings up on the UBI Lab Arts YouTube and whatever else as well for people to access. So you can share them around if there's other people that you think it'd be good to get involved in this. Great. Ciao tutti. Grazie.
Okay. Ciao. Yeah. See everyone later. Cheers. Bye-bye.
See you again. Bye. You're right there, Toby. Have you got? I was just going to check before we stop that we've got the chat saved, but I think we have.
Yes. Yeah. Let me. What I'll do is